Let's go! Fish Stripes Live, presented by La Pop. That is LAPOP. We are back right after the Twin Series. You guys may be a little surprised to see us, but we are previewing Marlins at Mets. The Marlins go on to their first road trip of the season, but before that, very small panel tonight, but we have a very special guest, Eli Sussman, with us, Alex Carver as usual, and we have Daniel DeVivo, Fish on the Farm, Swimming Upstream podcast, partners with Alex Carver. Danny, it's nice to have you on, and when we have these guys on, we have to talk prospects, and a lot went down today in terms of Wahoo's media day and a lot of previews happening. So, Danny, thanks for hopping on, and we're excited to have you on.
Thanks, Gav. Thank you. I'm always excited to come in here, talk with the Fish Stripes gang. So always happy to do it, and ready to talk some Marlins, especially after a win.
Exactly, and Danny mentioned that a win. Marlins take the series against the Minnesota Twins, winning their first series of 2023. The Twins were one of the hottest teams entering this game. I mean, they had swept the Kansas City Royals. They were undefeated. They beat the Marlins in Game 1, 11-1, as you could see there. Sandy goes all 9 in Game 2, shoves, and thanks to Avisail Garcia, I never thought I'd be saying that one. He hit a homer and and allows Miami to win Game 2. And then Jesus Luzardo, 10 strikeout game. Jorge Soler, two-run homer game, 2-homer game. Brian De La Cruz with an RBI. Miami wins that one and takes the series. And now they head to New York with a record of 3-4, and they are second in the NL East. Let's start with Alex Carver here, Fish on the Farm. Your thoughts on the series? A lot to take away from just maybe some not much run scoring in those first 2 games on the Marlins, but the third one, kind of broke out there in the end. And for the first time in 2023, they score more than 3 runs in a game.
Yeah, season's not over yet, right? I mean, that's what I would say, right? If they would have lost this series, it would have been bedlam. But no, very early in the year, it's cool to see these guys get a series. I did not have them getting the series. I had them losing the series, but I was wrong, and I'm glad to be wrong. So, yeah, man, Sandy, you can't say enough. I mean, that guy's so good. I mean, to throw 100 pitches and throw a complete game is just so good. He only got the 1 run of support, which Sandy, unfortunately, is used to, but that's all he needed because he made it stand up for himself, which is fantastic. That guy's only getting better. He's so good, and still somehow underrated in terms of some analysts' viewpoints, but he shouldn't be because he's a Cy Young for a reason. So that guy is fantastic. Luzardo, very impressive. That guy was dialed in today, man. When you go in, and even when he was working behind in the count, he was still throwing his breaking pitches for strikes, which is awesome, not just relying on his fastball. That guy was fantastic, and I think he showed why he's going to be one of the most encouraging pieces as we go forward this season. So Luzardo, also incredible. Cueto, I know he got injured, but I wasn't high on that guy from the start. Now I guess it's going to be probably a mixture of Braxton and Castano, I guess you would say. So, yeah, at the back end of the rotation, which that's going to is what it is kind of territory for them. But, yeah, like you said, Kevin, this team has to score with guys on base. It was the problem last year. It's continued to be the problem this year. Today they worked it out, but those first 2 games, it was still a problem. So that's what to look at going forward is how they do with guys on base with runners in scoring position. That's going to make the difference, I think, for a lot of the year. But yeah, good to see a couple things. Avi with the home run was cool. Soler breaking out today. Those are the two guys. If the Marlins are going to do something this year and really make noise, those guys got to show up. And they did it in this series, and hopefully that continues. So yeah, an encouraging series for the Marlins, and we'll see what happens. Not tomorrow, but I guess on what would that be?
Friday.
On Friday. Yeah, against New York. So
yeah, and let's just go to Eli. Your thoughts on the series, and I guess I'll ask this question to all three of you because with Sandy, the way he pitched the other night, thankfully I was there in attendance to watch. He was dialed in, and you could see the pitch count, and it was at 50 in the fifth, and this is where I'm going to go with the question. That's where I kind of knew Sandy's going to go all nine. There's no way they're taking him out of this game. And I'll ask each one of you, at what point in the game did you guys think, yeah, Sandy's going all nine? And I'll start with Eli.
Well, this is funny because I had a conversation with somebody else about this. The fact that at the beginning of the game, you don't really know what Sandy you're going to get. Like he always, when he's on his game, you see it the second time and the third time through the order. From the very beginning of the game, even in this one, like it didn't seem particularly out of the ordinary. It didn't look all that much different from his previous start. And his previous start on opening day looked sharp early on. And then in the middle innings, that's when he really lost all control of what he was doing and ended up having, by his standards, one of his worst outings in recent memory. So you never really know until the middle innings. In his case, and honestly, I didn't even think he was like an A+ in this game either. He got this was just great timing, but also as usual, just so unpredictable with his pitch selection. And in this case, he was getting swings early in the count. That usually works out so well. When he gets an opponent that is willing to swing early in the count, usually they're going to make not great contact, and they're going to make easy outs for him and allow him, as you said, to get really efficient in this one. I'm looking for the point where I really thought he was going to go all the way. I guess it was that second time through the lineup, probably in that fourth inning when he went through the top of the order super efficiently in that one. And it was actually, I guess, when he lost his perfect game. I think it was when Gene Segura in the fourth inning, this was an infield hit that seems like it really makes the play for a normal third baseman. But then the way that he just bounced back from that immediately, maybe that was kind of the signal for me, where he was getting a lot of weak contact before that. And then obviously after it, when he overcame the weakness of his defense, that's such a big question with Sandy trying to repeat his Cy Young performance from last year, is whether this defense this year, which I think we can all agree is going to be a step down from what he's used to, is he going to be able to make up for some of the awkwardness that comes with playing these guys out of position? He certainly did that last night.
Yeah, and something I wanted to quickly mention was, we could see from the box scores, game 1 and game 3, an error each. Miami didn't have a single error, so the defense really held their own in that game for Sandy, besides obviously the infield hit, which Eli mentioned, which broke up the no-hitter in that fourth inning, unfortunately.
Perfect game.
Perfect game. That would have been something if Sandy got that one. But Danny, what was the moment that you really thought Sandy was going all nine?
Like, I agree with Eli and Sandy. Sometimes you don't know until those middle innings, but for this one, he just looks so confident, man. It's like 9 pitches in the first inning and then like 10 pitches in the second. And you were like, yeah, no. He looks like it today. He didn't have his ace strikeout stuff or anything like that, but he just knew the ball was moving, and he just had that look in his face that you can tell. So it was, I would guess for this one, it was pretty early for me, and he was coming to pitch after 5 minutes every single time he went back to the dugout, because the offense was being as we're accustomed. And so yeah, he just was on and no distractions. So I'd say pretty early. Obviously, I wasn't like, oh, of course he's going to finish it in the second inning, but it was like, oh, he's going deep today. This is not like last game where the walks. That's the other thing. He's not many three ball counts in the first 2-3 innings. So I was pretty confident that he was going deep on this one.
Yeah, and that's something that's interesting with Sandy. He allowed 4 walks in his first start. Luzardo, which we'll talk about in a minute, allowed, I think it was 5 in his start against the Mets. Miami, this time around, both of them just allowed 1 walk each. So, maybe they just needed to go one time through the rotation to get adjusted. Sandy and Luzardo back-to-back phenomenal starts. Alex, your point where you knew Sandy was going all 9, and then I think we'll talk just a little bit about Soler and Luzardo to wrap it up.
Yeah, man. I think I would agree wholeheartedly with what Daniel just said. It's just his economics, like how economical he was with his pitch count. Like you said, he didn't have that ace, like huge blow it past you, swing and miss stuff, but didn't need it. And that's the beauty of Sandy. He doesn't need to be his best to do something like this, which, I mean, man, like in 45 minutes, he throws a complete game shutout. Like that's just not something that's heard of, even if a guy doesn't have his best stuff. So it's pretty early. When this guy's throwing 9, 10, 11 pitch innings, you know that he definitely has the stuff and definitely has the ability to go deep into a game and even finish a game, as we saw in this regard. Like 100 pitches, he finishes a game. Yeah, it's early in the season for him, but it's early in the season for the lineup he's facing as well. But so I guess it's just an even matchup there as well with in terms of the age of the season. So doesn't matter to me. That never crossed my mind. This guy was ready, willing, and able to just take down the team that he faced, and it was beautiful. So yeah, Sandy's a very, 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 very special guy, and I think we saw why in the start.
And before we move on, I quickly want to mention that I think it was Alex who mentioned that Cueto got injured. Yes, he did get injured. He is going on the 15-day IL along with Joey Wendell. They're calling up Braxton Garrett, Garrett Hampson, and Daniel Castano. So those guys are making the trip to New York, and we'll get into that rotation situation later. But just to end off talking about the Twins here, we need to talk about Jesus Luzardo and Jorge Soler in today's game, where Miami won 5-2. Eli, your thoughts on Luzardo? I mean, I unfortunately could not watch the game, but he was dialed in from the start. I mean, just me looking at box scores and then watching highlights all over again, Luzardo looked like he just looked dialed in. And then thankfully, Jorge Soler, who's had a very good start to the season, already 3 homers on the year, 2 today in the afternoon game.
Yeah, I got some highlights for you for other people that didn't see Luzardo in action today. He was every bit as dominant as Sandy in this one, just with several different pitches. This is mostly sliders in here, but his fastball up in the zone today was electric. The velo, I think, was even higher than in his first start. A lot of 97, 98, and several 99s. And then the shadows came into play too. What made this last game unique is that it was the first time in 4 years that they played a home afternoon game with the roof open. And the reason why they don't do it that often is because look at these shadows. These shadows are totally unfair, especially at this point in the game, in the middle innings, man, where he's in sunlight, and then as soon as he releases the ball, it disappears. And so that helped him. That helped Pablo. I'm glad that it played out the way it did with both of those guys being amazing in this one. But no doubt, I think the conditions were in their favor here. With Luzardo coming into this season, I was just extremely high on him. I think he's gone even more to being a complete pitcher with the improvement of his changeup, with, as I mentioned, the fastball velo being as high as ever, and with his slider being as unhittable as ever, with his willingness to tinker with his timing and his delivery to make it even more impossible. There's a couple in here where you could see he's gotten a big fan of doing this quick pitch and with great success. And there's not much more to say. This guy is the surefire number 2 of this rotation for this year and hopefully for years to come. This is not an easy test to go up against this Minnesota Twins team. So who's his next start against? Most likely against the Phillies in Philadelphia. That's going to be another big challenge. I think he's an all-star caliber pitcher right now. He is, with the improvement that he's made. So I'm excited to see him chase that. I felt kind of similar about Pablo at this time last year when, of course, he went on to win April Pitcher of the Month. Usually sustaining it is not as easy as it seems. I really believe this is sustainable. This guy is awesome. That Starling Marte trade continues to, the perception of it continues to evolve little by little. And so much credit goes to Luzardo as he just keeps improving his game to actually realize that full potential he always had as a prospect.
And he's so underrated. It's crazy. Like a lot of it has to do with him being a Marlin and not in the media. Like if he were a Yankee, you just know he'd be, completely overhyped. But being a Marlin, just like Sandy up to last year, so underrated. Like in my fantasy leagues, I'll trade for him for cheap and just
Yeah.
happy. It's so easy. And just as Eli says, he is so good and sustainable as well. Nasty, just nasty. And if he's not walking guys, then that's it. I mean, he does look like a legitimate number two.
Yeah, and then
the crazy part
Go ahead.
is that this guy's got 360 grade pitches. I mean, he really does. That slider that you see, and just the confidence, like we said earlier, and I think we said it in our chat earlier today too. He's in 3-1, 3-0 even counts, and he's throwing that slider for strikes and not afraid to do that, right? So, and then the other thing I would say is that as good as his changeup is, I don't think he fully had the changeup today. So I think he's even better than he showed today because I don't think the changeup was fully there. I think fastball slider was really good today. I don't think he fully had the changeup. So I think he could even be better than what we saw today, which is just so encouraging because this guy was damn good today. So very, very cool. Yeah, the shadows probably played a part, but also kudos to Nick Fortes, who caught him very well, even in those shadows that we saw earlier in the highlights that Eli showed. So it's not an easy task either. So I think Fortes caught him really well. Those two seem to have a really good rapport together. Really encouraging pitcher. This guy, as I said before, I mean, didn't show it with the A's. Kind of started to show it last year, but I think he's starting to put on display exactly what he can do if he has everything together. So yeah, this guy's going to be a main guy to watch outside of Sandy, as he proves that he's the full number two starter on a full-time basis for this team. Really good.
Yeah, and then the final player I'll mention quickly to move on to, I think, what we're all here for is Jorge Soler, who just looks a lot more comfortable. Already 3 homers, 3 doubles. He has 7 hits on the year. I mean, he looks a lot better. Obviously, the strikeout numbers do not look good. He already has 8 strikeouts on the year against only 1 walk. And there we see Jorge Soler with the, I guess, with the Marlins chain, with the glasses. It was a great vibe today at the ballpark. I mean, if you made it out, I hope he had a good time. But he's looked great. There's just no other way to say it. And, he's looked good defensively, too. That game when I went on, I believe, Friday, where he hit the homer, he made the catch, he looked a lot more comfortable and right. And he mentioned that to the media after the game, that he feels better at right field. And if Avi could hold up in left, I think you could probably make this change permanent. And it's nice to have Soler also in a way that he's not injured, because we know since spring training, he was with these lingering back issues. He's no longer injured. He looks a lot better at the plate. He looks a lot more comfortable in Lone Depot Park, which all 3 homers have been there. So that's the good thing too. He's turning this into a hitter's park for himself, hopefully. And let's see what he does on the series. Goes to Citi Field, and now we'll go to Philadelphia, where that is also a hitter-friendly ballpark. So those should be very good series for Soler. He looks ready, and also he's kind of playing to see if maybe he opts out and gets that bigger deal out there in free agency. So that's the other point I want to mention out here. He's kind of playing for something here as well. So I think it's time to talk some prospects, Eli, Danny, and Alex. I think this is the way we'll start. We'll start with Alex because Danny's not here right now. And this is how I will put it. What are your thoughts at this moment in time about the Miami Marlins farm system from top to bottom? Very quickly.
Oh, man. That's a great question. My feelings would be, I would say, overall, I think Danny will echo me when he has to speak, but I think my overall thoughts would be mixed on this. They still have the pitching. I will still stick to the fact that they have the pitching. And they don't just have the frontline pitching, but they have the mid and back end pitching as well, with guys that we don't talk about as often as we talk about guys like Yuri Dax, Milbrandt, these front or more higher heralded prospects. They also have the MD Johnsons, and they have guys like that can really just step in and take innings when they need to take them and be good at it. So they have the front, mid, and back end starting pitching to really be good long term in that regard, is what I would say for starting pitching. Position players, there are serious holes. I would point to the prime candidate of center field as being one that they don't really have that much of from within, especially in the short term. In the longer term, they have it. And then they have guys at shortstop that I think will move off of shortstop as well. So those 2 main positions of need that permeate to the big league team are what are not issues, but they're not a right now fix for the Marlins, especially if they're planning to compete right now. So those would be my main two things. Would be the same positions that we talk about all the time for the big league team. It kind of permeates to the minor league side of things, because they have a lot of shortstops, but a lot of them are going to move off and go to other positions, in my opinion. So that would be my opinion. The offense isn't where it needs to be. They need to prove that they can develop offense, and hopefully with these new player development folks in place, that's what they're going to start to do. So that would be my main opinion on the system as a whole. Where does it rank? I would probably say middle of the league, honestly, right now. We were talking a couple of years ago that this was top 5, maybe even top 10 at the lowest. They're outside of that, for sure, unfortunately, in my opinion. But doesn't mean they can't get it back. They just need to prove that they can develop talent to the fullest extent.
And I will just reiterate the same question the Vivo.
Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty much in the same opinion than Alex. Pitching, not just pitchers they currently have. It's the pitching development that I trust. Whether it's a high caliber guy that they draft or sign that becomes good, or someone they identify in a middle rounds that they make good. I feel like pitching we're set. That's why I'm comfortable with trading anybody not named Yuri Pettis. Because they will keep developing them and they will keep becoming good major leaguers. The offense is a problem, and right now, after many of them weren't able to reach their potential or even close to their potential, I'd say we're now at a kind of the next generation that makes us excited. Double A, Triple A. Of course, there are some names offensively that could become everyday major league players. Not many, but there are some names. What I'm excited about is the lower levels. The kids coming from the DSL. There are some solid names there. Let's see how they do stateside. Some guys in the Sky Carp, the Beloit and Jupiter levels, especially Beloit. I think I really like that lineup. And I guess we'll talk about those names later on. But it's the next generation. Double A and Triple A don't excite me too much offensively. But the lower levels, I do feel like it's coming, and hopefully they can forget anything they learned from the previous hitting development team, because it was bad. I don't know how it was while they were being developed, but the results were very, very bad. I mean, they pretty much didn't hit on anyone except Jazz, who came in already as a Double A player. Jesus is hit or miss. De La Cruz came in Triple A, right? So it's not guys we scouted or developed. So it's clear that it needed to be changed, and they did. To their credit, they did change a lot of the people in the hitting development side. So we're hoping to see some solid results, for this season. So I'm really, really excited to follow the lower levels, especially. And yeah, we'll see how it goes from there.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to touch up on. I mean, the lower levels are probably the more exciting ones, especially Beloit, where you have Khalil Watson, Yidi Capes going over there. Unfortunately, Ian Lewis is not there, but you have some Jacob Berry's at that level too, and Beloit. So Joe Mack, you have some nice pieces there, and we'll talk about that team because I know what your answers are going to be for one of the questions I'm going to ask later on, but we kind of know what the teams are going to look like now. We know what AAA looks like. AA basically know what that's looking like, and the rest of the minor league levels. Now, I want to ask you guys what assignments or what players assigned to which team surprised you the most. I know there are a lot of AA guys that should be in AAA, and we'll talk about that soon because there was kind of a little statement made today at the Wahoo's press conferences where you weren't there, Alex. I think you had just left. So we'll talk about that soon. But there's a couple names out there that I know should be in AAA that were in AA. Maybe those are the guys you'll mention, or it's other players. And whoever wants to start.
Sure, I'll start. I'd say the surprises weren't because of the aggressiveness, and they were more because of the how conservative they were. Like no DSL kids, it looks like, except one who I just saw in the Jupiter roster, Risquiel Tineo. who came directly from the DSL, and he's more bullpen even than rotation. So he would be the only kid who they were aggressive with from DSL to low A. But in terms of aggressiveness, not really anyone that I'd say like, wow. I mean, do you remember like when they drafted Meyer, and then after the 2020 season immediately went to Double A. Same with Eater. Like that was pretty aggressive. We didn't see any of those, like someone jumping 2 levels, or at least someone who everyone's high on. Yeah, like you see them put like a Jackson Rose in AAA, but you kind of know that it's not because they're high on them. It's more like, hey, we need to fill this roster spot here, and we don't want to bring someone from AA. So it's more like that. So I didn't see anyone with an aggressive assignment, which I don't really criticize. But so in terms of surprises, they're more on the very conservative side, of course. Eddie Perez repeating AA. I guess they just want him at a comfortable spot to work on a few things, according to what I read. I think it was Craig. And McIntosh as well. I think he was ready to go to AAA. Maybe they want Eddie to have his own catcher. That could be the reason why. But those two specifically, I felt were pretty, pretty passive. And then, of course, there was a big buildup of infielders at AAA, so they needed to send guys who I felt were ready for AAA to AA, like Joe Rizzo, for example. I think he would have been good at AAA. I like what I saw from him. And some other guys, Troy Johnston probably deserved to be at AAA too. So surprises to me were more on they were passive instead of aggressive.
Yeah,
right.
If you want to go
maybe
right
PMAC and Yuri, they're just a package deal. So maybe it's as simple as that. Where they'll move up together when the opening is there. I'm totally with you. Where I was surprised by those and others that were conservative on that side. Coming out of spring training, they had a lot of bodies of these journeyman players, and they just kept all of them. I thought they would just make some hard decisions, cut a few of them loose, maybe work out a minor trade somewhere. And they just kept them. It's good to have depth, but these guys, they're players that don't really have any development left. So if you're keeping them, it's because you think maybe they can help you in the big leagues as the season goes on. And I don't really agree with that based on what we've seen from a lot of them during the spring. And in turn, it had this trickle-down effect. The reason why I bring that up and the reason why I'm kind of critical of it is I just don't like the message that sends within an organization where, especially PMAC is the best example, where as a hitter, he was so terrific last year that you want to reward these guys when they perform well over the course of a whole season. Now, Yuri, I guess you can make the argument a couple different ways just because there was some inconsistency last year. We think that was due to injury, but to be fair, there was some inconsistency. But the guys that did perform so well, mainly PMAC and also Troy Johnston, who performed really well at the AA level, you want to make them feel valued. You want to recognize what they did in the terms of a promotion that also comes with a slightly higher salary, and that makes them feel that they're closer to the big leagues, even if they're not on the 40-man roster. So I don't like the message that sends, and it is surprisingly at odds with what we saw from this organization just the previous year and the previous 2 years, where they were, as Daniel pointed out, they were very aggressive. And now this time, it being on a more conservative side, that's been a surprise. So we'll see how it plays out. At the moment, as we touched on, they just have a lot of depth. Generally speaking, relatively good health throughout the organization. There are a few key injuries that I guess we could touch on, but all things considered, that it is a weird situation to see so many, particularly on that Pensacola roster, so many familiar faces who have been at that level, if not just 1 year, in some cases who've been there each of the last 2 years, coming back instead of matriculating. They're back to defend their Southern League championship, but I think in their minds, they wouldn't mind moving up one level if there was room for them.
Yeah, and someone who stood out to me, especially today when we spoke, was Troy Johnston. He says this feels like a AAA team because the guys on there, a lot of them deserve to be in AAA. That's the message. When I asked him, he didn't give me a yes or no if he was surprised or not, but he definitely told me midway through the interview, like, he's someone who felt like a lot of guys here were a little surprised that they were kept in AA. They felt like they should have been in AAA. And this feels like a AAA team. Yuri, I believe, should be in AAA right now. PMAC as well. Troy. That's probably about it. Maybe Griffin Conan, I'm missing that one. Joe Rizzo, as Danny mentioned, I think should be in AAA. But this also goes to show that Miami really learned their lesson last year with their depth issues. We thought they had nice depth, and they did not. They really didn't. It ended up with Eric Gonzalez making his MLB debut last year, and you had Williams Astudillos going out there. So I guess they felt like that was an issue, and they brought in all the NRIs that they brought. They kept them all basically, unless I'm missing one or two that just didn't stay. Maybe Gio Hardeleb didn't stay. I haven't heard that name in a while. I don't know if
I do have some reporting on that. He is dealing with
there you go.
minor injury. He says he wants to be back
injured.
on the mound soon. Let me make sure I have the exact one from that one. Yeah,
I
he
saw
wasn't
that he
able
was
to
put on the 7-day, but I don't know why. Maybe you have that.
Yeah. So if I just go into here, we have this new page on the site where I'm combining both the MLB injury updates and the minor league stuff. But when it comes
Make
to
sure you
Jeff,
bookmark that one, folks.
yeah, I think at this moment, I'm talking about Jeff Hartley, who actually does have several years of major league pitching experience. He's dealing with a right lat issue that kept him sidelined, but he's definitely expected to pitch at AAA as we get towards the middle of the season. He should be on the mound soon, and then he's somebody that he's that tweener where he could be stretched out to be a starter or he could be in middle relief. But later in this season, we'll see him in Jacksonville.
I think
there's one that I did. Sorry. You were talking about injuries, so there's one that maybe you guys have heard of that I haven't. Who I just never saw again, never heard of from again, but still shows is active. Is Richard Rodriguez, the Pirate? Like, where is he? It's a good mystery.
That's one I'll have to ask, and maybe Eli will have to as well. But he didn't make a single because he got the invites to spring training. He didn't make a single nothing.
Yeah.
And I actually at the time it was a pretty all right signing. He was pretty good with Pittsburgh until the suspension. But yeah, that's an interesting name.
It's the same thing with like Iglesias. Like we expected him in AAA, and we have just not heard. I haven't heard anything on him. So yeah, there's another interesting modicum of like, where are these guys, right? Like, what's going on? Like, especially Rodriguez, as Danny said, like, we haven't seen this guy at all. I didn't see him at one single camp, game, nothing. I didn't see that guy at all. So I don't know. Maybe that's a question to ask. But I think I would agree with what Eli and Daniel both said in terms of they can't make in this situation, in this offseason and going into this minor league season, they didn't make many hard decisions. They released some guys and cut some guys that, it was hard to see them go, but they were those replacement level or lower guys that, it wasn't really a full surprise. But, like, they hold on to guys. Like, I don't want to bring up certain names because I like these guys, but, like, Paul McIntosh and Will Banfield are in AAA, and those guys need to play regularly. But Santiago Chavez is a starting catcher or backup catcher, at least, in AAA. That guy, he's been on the taxing squad a couple times, but I think his major league ceiling is pretty low. So that would be a guy that you could just, he's done things for the organization, but he's still here. And then like Alex DeGotti, he has great defense. They signed him to a minor league deal. Maybe they just want to keep him as a reinforcement, but there are so many other guys that you could point to and say, okay, we can get Charles LeBlanc full-time playing time at third base. There's one less guy in his way, stuff like, so it's just not many hard decisions made, I would say, to clear space. And now, as Troy said to you, Kevin, you have a AAA team basically in AA, while AAA is
that's
okay,
a quadruple A team. That's a quadruple A team.
Right, it's very AAA, is what I would say about AAA. So, no knock on those guys, but that looking at that roster, it's just like, man, you wish you had a PMAC or a Troy in there. And Troy played in AAA last year. He struggled, but he played there, and I thought he would definitely be back, but was not back. So it's interesting the route that they're going here. So I think a lot of those guys expected to be in AAA. But then at the lower levels as well, as Danny said, I'm also surprised to see that there's no real aggressiveness there either. Like Marco Vargas is a name that we haven't talked about, who really impressed in spring training.
He was really good. Yeah.
Played with AA and AAA guys in spring training. He goes to extended, which leads to tell you that he will probably go to the FCL, which probably isn't the worst thing to get him some stateside experience because he's only played in the DSL. But that would have been an aggressive assignment that you could do. Be like, hey, this guy's ready right now to play full season baseball in the United States. Like, that would have been cool to see. Piguero is another guy that you could point to in that regard that played those innings with AAA and AA this spring. There's multiple other guys that you could point to and say, yeah, that guy, I could have seen him getting pushed, but they don't seem to be in the mind frame of challenging guys as they have done in years past, which is interesting. So, I would say they didn't clear space. There's a lot of guys around. They got to find playing time for all of them. And that's why AA looks the way that it does going into the year.
And I guess
I'll
it's
give you
good.
another.
Sorry, Danny, but competitively,
Yeah.
AA looks pretty fun. And I think we'll say that they do have a good chance to, I guess, go back to back if you want to look at it in that case. But I really quickly do want to mention that I want to ask, actually. I want to ask both of you, Danny and Alex and Eli. Would we say Yidi Cape was more of an aggressive move? He barely played in Jupiter. I think it was more of the second half. He was more FCL. Jupiter, they moved him up. I thought he would honestly, as much as I agree with the move to put him in high A, I thought he would begin the season in Jupiter again, especially after kind of the slow ending for his season. And if anyone could take this one.
Yeah, I guess that could be seen as one of the more aggressive-ish moves. Let's see, he had 37 games, 167 PAs, a little below average, but didn't seem to be completely overwhelmed by the level. Didn't strike out much. Although his game has never tended towards that. So yeah, I guess it could be one of the more aggressive moves, but not as much. I do feel like he has the bat to stay alive over there and learn. And obviously everybody suffers with that first month of crazy cold, especially the hitters. So yeah, I'd say, as you mentioned, maybe one of the more aggressive ones. But really quickly, someone I forgot to mention to me really was a surprise. It was Ronald Hernandez, the catcher. Like every report that I got from spring was that he looked confident back there. Like his receiving was great, his arm looked great. He's hitting the ball well, and he just left at the complex, and they gave Barstad and Prater and Mercado the spot. So that one was surprising to me that he wasn't assigned to Jupiter.
He did look really good, and I saw him in person, thankfully, a couple times. He looked good behind the plate. I think he was the one who caught Eder in that first live start. It was either him or it was Hostetler, but I know one of those two caught him, and I'm leaning towards more it was Ronald who caught him. But I think before we move on, we have to go to a quick pop break. We'll be talking about prospects in the hot seat, who are Major League ready, and the level to watch, and then we'll quickly preview the Mets after this break. And we are back, Fish Stripes Live, presented by La Pop. And I think we're just going to get right into it. All right, level to watch. We spoke already about AA, AAA. We really haven't touched up on the other levels. There's obviously high A below it. We have low A Jupiter. We have the FCL, DSL, all those levels down there. And I want to ask, and we'll go Carver, Daniel, and then Eli. Alex, which is the level to watch this year if you're a Miami Marlins farm head like you guys are, or all of us here are?
Whew, man, I guess the easy answer would be the Wahoos, but I'm really looking at Beloit, man. You got, like you said, Yidi Cape, who is so good. Like, I really like that player. That guy can play multiple positions. He could stick at shortstop. He could go to second base. He could play third base. Like, he could play multiple positions wherever you need him. He's got really good wiry power. That guy is my favorite offensive prospect, especially now with Salas gone. That is my favorite offensive prospect in the Marlins minor league system. He looks good. He's a big, tall kid, a little lanky, but he'll put on weight as he goes. You got Khalil Watson there with him. You got Zach Zubia, who's one of the guys that nobody talks about and is not in anybody's top 30 except for maybe mine, because I like that guy a lot. Showed the power this spring as well. I was there for his 2-homer game. I think a couple of us were. That was really awesome to see on the backfields against a different team, not against his own team. That guy's good. You got Joe Mack behind the plate. You got Evan Fitterer, who looked really good as well in spring training. That's a really good arm to watch. Up to 96 this spring per some people that I talked to about his velocity. Also mixes in a good curveball and a good slider. That guy's really good. I really like the look of him as well. So if the easy answer is going to be Pensacola, because as we just talked about, you have all those, I would say guys that are not very far away from maybe making a major league debut. Maybe we see a couple guys get called up straight from AA to the majors this year. It's totally possible. But yeah, the level for me to watch, and the level that I would say, if there is one level that you're going to watch them all. But if there is one for me, it would be the Beloit Sky Carp at Single A Advanced.
Is what's his name? It's Isaac's guy.
Jacob Barrett?
Morissette.
Cody Morissette. Is Morissette with AA or is he with Beloit?
He's
Remains
hurt.
to be seen. Not sure. I would guess that he would go to AA, but that would be a guess. Still rehabbing from the ORIF surgery, which, if you know what that is, I don't know if there are how many doctors are listening, but really advanced surgery to replace a bone break. And he went through that and was rehabbing from it most of the offseason and is still rehabbing from it now. Talked to him in the spring, and he was like, yeah, I'm just taking it easy, man. I'm trying to get back to 100%. So he's near 100% in terms of what he told me, but the build back is pretty slow. We saw him take at bats, but then on the side, he was doing his infield work. So it's a slow build back. He is, as per his own words, he is ready, but I think the Marlins are just taking it super, super easy with him. So remains to be seen what level that he goes to, which I think could play into the fact, like what you said about Yiddy getting promoted and these other guys getting promoted. That absence probably has something to do with it.
Yeah. All right, Danny, what's your team?
So as I mentioned, I'm pretty confident on the pitching. Pitching is going to be fine, and that's what you'll mostly find at AA. But so with that in mind, the team to watch, just as Alex said, it's 100% the Beloit Sky Carp. That's our future right there. Those hitters, that infield, Barry, Yiddy, Khalil, Joe Mack, that's our future. Not only in terms of future Marlins, but future trades whenever it's necessary, when they come up either at the deadline or during the off season. And those guys, they really need to do well this year. As I mentioned, they're the new generation. So I don't think this organization can take another generation of failed hitting prospects. So I would really want to see this team do well. And as Alex mentioned, Zubia, he's not a top 30 for me, but it all comes down to that Johnston assignment to AA. He was assigned to AA. Zubia should have been in AA, but no, it's because of that he's at high A, and because he's at high A, Torrey Montgomery, who should have been in high A, is in Jupiter. So I don't think they handled the first base well. I mean, I'm not there, so obviously I'm not the keeper of the truth here, but I was expecting to see all of those guys at higher levels to begin the season, and who knows, maybe after a week they'll be promoted. But so he's also here at Beloit. So this is definitely the team that I'll be watching throughout the year, at least to start, because by midseason everybody's up to the next level. So it's them.
All right, Eli, you're up.
Beloit as well for me. I put Barry on here for a reason. Him and Khalil, in particular, Khalil Watson, those being the two most recent Marlins first-round draft picks. With Barry, at least in my observation, this is not a scientific study, but it was one of the more unpopular first-round draft picks that the Marlins have made since Tyler Kolek, maybe even more unpopular at this time, given who else was available for the Marlins with their first-round pick in 2022, and also just the lack of ceiling that comes with somebody like Barry. I kind of sarcastically put him on here, making a throw defensively at third base. just because there's a lot of skepticism about him sticking at this position long term. Even for a guy that is, at this moment, he's still just 21 years old. For as young as he is, and even though this is certainly his first full season in pro baseball, it is such an important year for him. What the Marlins touted when they drafted him is how close he was to being big league ready, how polished he was as a switch hitter. So let's see it. Let's see it. Even at the high A level, he's going to be facing competition that's relatively the same age as him, only a little bit older. And we expect him to rake, or the Marlins expect him to rake. And that is a lot of his outlook in the way the entire draft class. A lot of it will come down to what he looks like right now in his first full pro season, and it's beginning in Beloit. A word of advice for everybody that's watching Beloit, a reminder that for the first month of the season, the conditions there, both at their home ballpark and a lot of the parks they play at, it's miserable, frigid tundra conditions in the Midwest. It is unpleasant to play out there, and the hitting is what usually suffers as a result. We saw this last year. There were some overreactions, and then as the season played on, that team really for like May onward, they actually performed fairly well, especially offensively. So that's one thing to keep in mind with somebody like Barry in particular, not to overreact. And then Khalil Watson, who last year, very beginning of the year, was red hot. I remember having like conversations about, is he going to make it up not only to high A, is he going to make it up to double A by the end of the year? He is way too good for this level, and very rapidly and abruptly came back down to earth. And as soon as those struggles kicked in, the psychological toll was pretty evident in watching him going about his season. The conduct that he had with opponents, with umpires, with other figures, and the unofficial suspension that he served within the organization for several weeks in the middle of the season, for a draft pick that on the opposite end was like super popular at the time. Everybody thought the Marlins had to steal the draft at 16 overall to get somebody so immensely talented. And he had such a exhausting year last year at the low A level. He finished on a high note. And in spring training, it seems that there's some promise that he is now closer to the player we originally envisioned him to be. Even younger than Jacob Berry is. Another player that didn't necessarily need to be promoted to Beloit to start the year, but he was. So that's I think that shows that Marlins perhaps are cautiously optimistic that there's some maturity in him that perhaps wasn't there at this time a year ago. I'm fascinated to see him in an organization where we point to a lot of these guys higher up that are frankly boring hitting profiles. And Barry, honestly, even if he pans out, it's kind of a boring hitting profile. Khalil is not boring. He's anything but boring. The tools are really tantalizing. They're still there. So I'd love to see that in action as well. So it's centered around those two guys. Beloit is where I'm fixated on. Lastly, I just want to mention somebody that I think Carver mentioned much earlier in the show, Evan Fitterer, who is further removed from entering pro ball. He's been slowed down by a few injuries, and then last year just by a lack of control that I feel like is still in there, and that you might not be far away from making a leap. One of my bold predictions this year is that Fitterer would be the minor league pitcher of the year in this organization because he has so many of these starter traits that I really like. So as long as he's healthy, and especially if he's starting the year kind of repeating the level that he pitched last year, he could put up some big video game stats before getting bumped up to Double A. Evan Fitterer is the one arm at Beloit that I'm most fascinated by.
Yeah, and I'll also go with Beloit, just really because of the reasons you guys said. I think the main guys are up in there in Beloit. And I really do think I was an advocate for this. I told this to Carver many times and Eli as well, that I do believe Tor Montgomery should have been in high A, especially just the age as well. College draft pick. You kind of would assume by now he would have been in high A. You know, just it's really the issue of AAA that's ruining what's happening down, Double A down, because Double A really looks like AAA right now, and AAA looks like quadruple A. So I want to quickly move on to just kind of what we're doing here, previewing, and I guess we could go in no specific order, but prospects on the hot seat. And what I mean by this are prospects that really had a down year, and you really have to watch out because this may be the final year where they're legit prospects. And if it's maybe a Victor Mesa Jr. or maybe a Zach McCambley. Those guys would fall under that type of category where you're giving them one last shot to prove themselves as a legit prospect and possibly have a successful major league career. And Eli, if you want to start off, and then I guess you guys could just go off of Eli.
McCambley is a really great example of that. He was the either third round pick in 2020. Early on, extremely exciting, based off mainly his unbelievable breaking ball. I guess you call it a curveball, but it's such a unique breaking ball that he has that does generate a lot of swings and misses when he gets into like advantageous pitcher-friendly counts. That was a big issue for him, really, since he's arrived at Double-A, is that he's falling behind in counts. He's getting into a lot of obvious fastball situations. He's giving up a lot more homers than I ever thought he might. This is really his last chance to stick as a potential starter. And maybe even that might be kind of a long shot, given some limitations in his velocity. And as well as, I remember speaking to him, was this 2 years ago already? Or was it just last year? I think it was 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago. I spoke to him, me and Ethan Podowski. We had a conversation with him entering spring training about his changeup and how excited he was to master that pitch, how confident he was with enough repetitions to expand that part of his pitch mix. And there really just hasn't been a lot of progress with that changeup ever since then. So he's coming off a season, get a 5.65 ERA at Double-A, and that's repeating Double-A after spending a lot of the previous season at Double-A as well. So McCambley is somebody that an organization that actually has a decent amount of young relievers that they like. This is, if he wants to be like a tick above them and still a starter candidate, he needs to do really well once again at this Double-A level. So besides him, anybody in a similar situation? I guess I'm thinking of guys that are, the ship has probably sailed on that, such as Osiris Johnson, who was drafted way back in 2018. The batted ball quality is still pretty tantalizing. He's got a great swing. He's still got good athleticism. He's still relatively young because he was so young when they drafted him. He's still like 22 years old, but he hasn't. What roster is he on? I think he's on Beloit again.
He's in Beloit.
He's repeating.
Yeah, he's somebody. Yeah, he's somebody that I think it wouldn't shock me if he makes it to the big leagues eventually. For whatever reason, he just hasn't been as complete a hitter as I thought he would be. So injuries have come into play, defensive inconsistencies that have forced him into the outfield. He's an interesting one, though. I think a lot of people would say that they're already like looking past him at this point. He's still in the very back of my mind as somebody that could surprise.
All right, Danny or Carver, whoever wants to go first.
There's one.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go Alex.
No. I guess for mine, I don't know what happened to this camera, but I guess for mine it would be Will Banfield. This
my guy.
has to show it. He has to show it with the bat. If he doesn't show it with the bat this year, that's it. I mean, he has to do it. I mean, he's got to improve with the bat. We know about the defense. We know that his defense can be very good. Got to improve offensively somehow in order to make this stick as a starting catcher. And if he doesn't, then he could still have a floor as a backup catcher, as a guy that can come in late in games and clean it up, or maybe it's just like a backup behind a starter, but he can't be a starter with this bat. So that's the guy is Banfield on top of McCambley, which Eli mentioned, and I do agree with that. It's just, you got to show it or that's going to be it. So that would be my guy. I guess I can give you one more, and not that it would be out if he struggled this year on this player, but this is still a younger player, but he's shown very little so far. He's a high school draft pick. I was high on him when they picked him. I'm starting to question it because of what I saw in spring and in other places. It's Jordan McCants.
You're killing me, Carver.
What's that?
You're killing me.
Jordan McCants.
Taking my guys.
That has to show more. You got to. I wouldn't be out if he struggles this year, but he would be another guy that I would point to and say, you got to show something different than what you've done in the past. But Banfield will be my main guy. McCants is another one. Cameron Barstad you could point to as well. He's still in Jupiter, this guy somehow. So I don't know how we could still defend him as a prospect anymore. Chris Mockma would be another guy for me. I can go in a million different directions here. But yeah, there's a lot of guys, or at least a few guys that I would say like, yeah, you have to show it this year or you're just going to be, probably one of those tough decisions that we talked about.
Would Jose Devers
Yeah.
be one for you guys?
I can't believe he's back in Double A. That's another guy like
That
how is
one
he Double A?
surprised me a little bit, yeah. But it's what we said. Triple A is basically quadruple A. When you have CJ Hinojosa, Alex Tagati, Charles LeBlanc in your infield, along with Jacob Amaya and Gerard, you can't do much. And Alex Carver left. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, there are other few guys that we can mention there. An obvious one is Griff Conine.
Oh, yeah.
They've tried to solve his strikeout issues for 3 years now, and it just hasn't gotten better. He's like, is this like third year at Double A? So obviously, the organization isn't really high on him anymore. Like if he kills it in Double A, you're still like, okay, what happens if he gets to the next level? So hopefully, he does end up doing, something, showing something, see if somehow he can get into the 20s, especially again, repeating a level for the third time. So that's definitely one. Another one who had a really, really bad year is who I was hoping would be kind of like a Burdick story, Tanner Allen. I was expecting a lot from him. He just raked his senior season in college and came in and then looked completely overmatched at low A, which is guys that are definitely younger than him, sent to FCL and didn't really kill it there. And for this year, back to low A. Hopefully he worked on his swing. I know that he does a lot of stuff in the off season, teaches hitting. So that's someone who I'd like to see kind of take a step forward. There's an interesting case in Caballero, who I've always heard is a great swing. He's a great hitter. Keep your eye on this guy. And then he plays and has great results. But for whatever reason, they kind of Luis Palacios the guy with just, he just stays at these lower levels, doesn't really, isn't really, they're not really aggressive with him or anything. And again, back to low A. So he's a kind of another name that not because of bad results, but it's just, it doesn't look like they're high on him at all. So he's really going to have to impress to open some eyes.
My guy was Will Banfield. So Carver took my guy. I do think the bat has to play. There's no question Will Banfield's a good defensive catcher. And there's the reason why he's the one who caught Dax Fulton. I think every single start, maybe one or two he didn't catch, but he caught Dax Fulton's every start. He caught a lot of Yuri Perez's starts towards the end of the year. And to be honest, the bat played at the end of the year too. He was pretty good towards the end there with Pensacola. So if he could kind of pick up what he was doing towards the end of the year, Will Banfield probably could end up being maybe the Nick Fortes story of this team. I think, was he also 2018? He was 2018, right, Carver? Yeah, 2018 with Fortes. So if you do end up moving from Stallings, Fortes would be your starter, and maybe, Banfield isn't too far away from the big leagues. But the bat has to play, and that's the big issue. And the other guy I'm going to mention, and some may disagree, I think it's Victor Mesa Jr. I mean, he was at 2022. He looked all right. Defensively, there's no question. Again, Victor Mesa is a really good defensive center fielder. Probably the best defensive center fielder outside of Jake Mangum. I like Jake Mangum's defense a lot in the minor league system. But when you're hitting 243, only 323, and then 346, and then OPS just not the best, you have to doubt it. I want to see how it is at Double A, though. I think this is a good challenge for him. He had to get the promotion at some point. I believe he was repeating Double A. But, I mean, he looked good. And
Are we talking about BBM or Mesa Jr.?
Kevin always has, he likes to interweave the two between them. Like
I
he
think
takes some elements of one and some elements of the other, and he fuses them. It's the same guy. You got the age, right?
I know he hasn't been in Double A.
He was at high A all last year. He was one of the youngest players on the roster. You're right that his numbers didn't quite live up to what people were expecting, considering the offensive talent that's in there. And even in the fall league, he didn't exactly light it up. But I mean, defensively, he's not on the same level as his brother, but offensively, the potential is still there. So for the moment, 21 years old, he's going to be playing most of the season at Double A for the first time, as you said, with his much older brother, who the ship has already sailed on. Victor.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
actually wondering whether they'd actually cut the cord and just release him at this point for Victor. There's nothing there. There's nothing coming there. That's already a sunk cost. His younger brother, still some hope for, but I'd like to seek different opinions on him. I'm still relatively high on
Yeah,
Victor
I'd say
Jr.
me
He had that
too.
nice moment in
I'm
spring
still-
training where he hit that walk-off home run in spring
Yeah.
training during one of his
He did.
field
Oh, yeah.
appearances. That was fun.
He did.
I will
What
say
I
I'm
can
still
say-
pretty high on Victor Mesa Jr. And you know this, Carver. I'm a big fan of Victor Mesa Jr. But if there's a guy to look out for, and you could kind of say hot seat type of player, I think would be Victor Mesa Jr. Just he has to prove himself at the AA level.
I wouldn't entirely disagree with you. Last year was not great for him. But like Eli said, he's still such a young kid. He's still 20, 21 years old, still one of the younger guys in this system. And man, did he look so good in spring training. Like not forget
He
it,
did.
but that moment where he hit that walk-off home run in the first pitch that he saw, yeah, it was probably against another minor league guy. I forget who they were playing at that time. But you hit a ball that far at Roger Dean Chevrolet Stadium, that's not easy to do in the first place. And he was doing the same thing consistently on the backfields. I was pointing him out to people that said, hey, what do you think about Victor Mesa Jr.? Some of the best swings in minor league camp all spring. And
100%.
it really does seem like he's kind of centering himself in. The first couple of years, he was kind of, as you heard today, I think, Kevin from Smoke, he kind of said he kind of had his hair on fire. He was kind of all over the place. I think he's a lot more disciplined in the personal regard. He seems to be kind of centering in on what he really needs to do to be successful as a baseball player. So, I mean, that's what a young kid needs to do. And I think he's doing it advantageously. So this is a big year for him. I would agree with you. If he struggles this year, am I out? No, kind of the same as I said with McCants. If he struggles this year, I'm not out. You kind of want to see a little bit something different, right, in terms of both of those players. But, I mean, these are still young kids that, they got to improve, and that's what the minor leagues are about. So this guy's been great so far in 2023. We'll see if that permeates to his time with the Pensacola Blue Wires, which, yeah, is a big jump. But we'll see what happens, man. I think this is a good challenge.
Always
And just
younger
to
than the
mention-
competition in his case, And
Yeah,
last
absolutely.
year with Beloit, he was 20 whole season, which is younger than most of everybody in that league now. AA, just 21 the whole year. Oh, same thing. He's gonna be younger than the competition. Like if he gives us a higher than 100 WRC plus, that'd be cool. But most importantly, what I really want to see from him is an increase in that ISO. Just more power. I want him to impact the ball more. Like I think the OBP is there, getting on base, back to ball, but I'd like to see more power. A few more home runs, a few more doubles. I think that's what I'd like to see from him this year.
And the thing is, just to bring this up really quickly before we go on, these guys all through the minor leagues play in these parks that are so hard to hit in. Like Beloit is not easy to hit. Jupiter's not easy to hit. Not making excuses because the contact's got to exist to make that happen in the first place. And Mesa Jr.'s BABIP was not too far below the league average of 300. I think it was at 296. So I mean that luck didn't really play a part. So yeah, you got to see the contact kind of permeate for him, which Daniel just pointed out. He showed that this spring. So if that can continue to show into the regular season, then I think we'll see the improvement that we want to see.
Yep. And just to wrap it up here, I think we're going to go with the final question. Who is Major League ready? So these are the guys who we feel really good about that if you put them on a Major League, on the Miami Marlins right now, you think they will be just fine. And,
Hinojosa.
that was coming at one point. If you want to start off, Danny, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll talk about Hinojosa. We know he's not going to be friggin' Bo Bichette. That's clear. But he's also not, just some random Eric Gonzalez guy, who had had good 3 games. Everybody's now talking about him. If you look at his stats the last few years, even back to 2019, he's been above league average in terms of WRC plus. He puts the bat on the ball, does not strike out, and he hits for average. He really does. And so it was a good signing from Miami. He's been doing well and impressed a bit in spring and is now killing it in AAA. So, I mean, if it's going to be Wendell or Hampson I kind of prefer to see Nahosa there. Obviously, I'm not too acquainted with his defense, but from what I'm seeing, it doesn't look like it's anything. That would be a liability. So I'd like to kind of see him come up. It's hard because he's not on the 40-man roster, but these are the type of guys who I'd like to see get opportunities. I asked for LeBlanc a whole year last year, and they just kept bringing up the guys who they were willing to DFA after 2 games. That was the problem, and I really, really disliked that. I criticized it a lot during the season. Okay, just bring on. We need hitters. Bring in the guys who deserve it, not the guys who just need a body there and are ready to DFA because that no one's going to claim, just like they did with Lindgren. And so, yeah, I'd like to see. They finally brought up LeBlanc, and he did very well, and they DFA'd him at the end of the season. Somebody asked, Gabriel asked if I think LeBlanc is going to get the call back up. I don't know. I mean, I think the team has they've really shown what they think of him. They just see him as a maybe quadruple A if they do bring him up. I think it's just going to be to DFA him later on. So, yeah, I'd say maybe, but don't get too excited. So Hinojosa is one guy, and probably Burdick. He's doing well. I think he's next up if we need an outfielder.
I actually like this question with that a lot of Marlins fans ask, will you ever live up to the prospect stardom? I mean, I think you were there, Alex, when Skip said he would be taking reps at center field. He had an all right spring. It wasn't the greatest thing ever, but he was all right. Defensively, he was all right. No complaints on my end, to be honest with you. It's just now to see how he starts off in a AAA, and I think he's been all right. I know he had a single today. I was watching a little bit of the game. He's been playing mainly second base and shortstop. We still haven't seen him play the outfield yet.
He has played 1 game in the outfield.
Oh, he did?
Now that I'm looking at this game log, let me see what day it was. It was yesterday. He played their game in center field.
Oh,
okay. I don't know anything beyond that other than that's where he was. He finally did get that test. For anybody unfamiliar, Xavier Edwards had always been an infielder. He played last year at AAA pretty equally between second, short, and third base. And this coming out of spring training, knowing how many infielders they had, they're trying him out there. There's some shades of Jazz there in terms of the inexperience. Yeah. The arm is a little bit questionable. The main asset that he has is his baseball instincts and his speed out there. Yeah. Being that they think he'll have the range to cover out there. He's a player that is still so young because he entered pro ball coming out of high school. He's still just 23 years old. He's coming off a down year, where Marlins did not give up very much to get Edwards at all. Those couple really young DSL guys. Santiago Suarez and also the recent draft pick Marcus Johnson. That's right. So it was those fair to get him. So Edwards, he's going to be a fascinating one to follow because I think his messaging is that I think he accepts that he's somewhat of a limited offensive profile. He's not going to hit for power. That's just not really in there. If he just focuses on doing what he can do best and optimizes his contact rate, now playing in a world without defensive shifting, he's a player that could benefit from that in terms of his batting average on balls in play compared to what it's been. He's a very interesting guy for sure. And I think understandably still very clearly a top 30 prospect in this organization. Being that he's on the 40-man roster, there is a very good chance that we see him at some point during the year.
I don't think he'll live up to that prospect stardom, but I think he'll be a pretty good MLB player. I mean, serviceable as well. I think the floor would be like a fourth outfielder or a utility guy, like a John Birdie type player, where his speed will be one of his main attributes and the defense versatility as well. But I think he could be a better offense. I think Birdie just holds. Would you say Birdie has more power than Edwards, Eli?
Birdie compared to Edwards, I guess so.
If Edwards ends up being the defensive guy, we think he could be playing outfield and obviously the infield as well.
Yeah, I'd give Birdie a slight edge. Yeah, with Edwards, he only had 1 career home run entering last year, his entire minor league career. And then last year, he they made him emphasize pulling the ball in the air, and he only hit 5 over the course of 93 games. So he is really on the bottom of the power pole, like at 30 grade power, if you want to be generous about it. He's a thickly built guy. It's just that the mechanics of his swing don't really generate the exit velos that you need to get it over the wall consistently.
Yeah, struggled against AAA stuff last year. Switch hitter, really struggled against AAA stuff last year, as the stats will prove, and as his 19% K rate will also prove. And when a guy that has pretty much no power strikes out 19% of the time, it's hard to really show the stats that you want out of a guy that can get on base and show that contact first approach that the Marlins are really targeting, right? So the speed is so good. I mean, it's literally the top grade that you can get in minor league baseball is 80 grade. He has 80 grade speed. So that's his main tool. That's why the Marlins are, they got to move guys around. As I said before, they have to move guys around. There's so much traffic, especially as they're keeping guys in AAA, as Danny and me both said before. They got to move these guys around and try to make them stick at new positions. This is the time to do it. So hopefully he can show more positional flexibility and be good in center field. I think he has the athleticism to do it. Definitely has the speed to do it and cover the ground. We'll just see how his reads go and stuff like that. But yeah, no, this guy could be good. But he's an on-base guy offensively, which would kind of limit his ceiling, I would say, overall offensively. And then you're moving him to a new position. Who knows if it works out or not? His defense, you can't really call him a defensive first guy either. So for me, for Xavier Edwards, the ceiling is lower, I would say, than we would like in terms of being like a full-time starter in Major League Baseball. I would say my outlook personally would be lower, probably, especially from when he was selected and drafted and stuff. My opinion would be his ceiling would be lower than that. But that doesn't mean he can't be a quality player and at least like defensive replacement, something like that. So see how he does at AAA. It's encouraging to see him get time in a new spot. Like I said, he has the athleticism to do it, so it's up to him now, right?
There are 3 guys that I group, now that we're talking about them, that I kind of have in the same, I see the same very similarly, and they're Edwards, Groshans, and Amaya. They're kind of a similar age.
Yeah, very similar.
They're all in AAA. They're all waiting for a shot. Some come from pretty good season, like Amaya last year. Others from disappointing seasons, like Edwards and Groshans. They all need to work on stuff. With like Amaya's, I'd say his floor is higher because he's a really good defensive shortstop, and that'll take you places. And that's definitely the guy I'm higher on of the 3. But I kind of see them in a similar spot where if they show something, if they show hitting skills at AAA, they'll get the call up. Because as we've seen with the offense in Miami, it's not something to write home about. It just really isn't. So if you have, especially shortstop, like if you show you can hit right now, it's yours. That position is yours right now. So I'm high on Amaya. If he can show something, he hasn't yet. Obviously, it's only been 3-4 games. But if he can show something, I think he should be someone who gets a solid chance in the majors.
Another thing to mention really quick, Danny. One more thing to mention. I'm going to be very brief on this, but just because you asked about guys that we could see or should see in Major League Baseball for the Marlins that are not there right now, Danny pointed out LeBlanc, Ryan Miller.
Yeah, that could be one. He had a nice spring too. I mean, for the limited action he got, he was pretty good.
It's ridiculous at this point, honestly. It really is ridiculous to me that this guy has not gotten his full chance to play in Major League Baseball. It really is bothersome. It's one of the things that I point to and say, why would somebody want to get drafted by the Marlins to just get stuck in AAA for basically their whole career? Like, that guy has proved it at every level. He almost hit 300 last year. He needs to either get his chance or not be on this team anymore, and he's stuck. So that player and his situation, I know it's an old regime guy versus a Kimang regime guy. It shouldn't matter. None of that should matter. That guy deserves his chance, and he has not gotten his chance. LeBlanc got his chance. He proved it. He earned it. He got it. Brian Miller has earned that chance, and so have a couple of other guys that I won't mention right now because we don't have time. But these guys need to either get their chance or they need to move on.
Yep, and I think with that being said, we will move on to. I'm not even going to talk about the Mets. The only, I think, news would be that Edward was lined up for tomorrow. We don't know really how the pitching rotation is going to work now with this new off day that was kind of put with the postponement of the game. We think
I'm going to make some educated guesses along the bottom line with this rotation that I think we could see. So Braxton Garrett sent down for about 12 hours and then brought back up when Johnny Cueto got hurt. I wonder if he might start this series opener on Friday. He'll already be fully rested, and they're trying to stretch him out again as a starter now that they have this void in the rotation. And I feel like they want to get that going as soon as possible. That's my theory, is that we could see Braxton making this Friday start against. Oh, I have the opposing pitchers incorrect down there because I still had the Twins series pitchers down there. That's why it was confusing. But anyway, I think we do see Braxton likely on Friday, Trevor on Saturday, which was initially planned, and then Sunday, I think that's when Edward comes out pitching on super extra rest. Edward being the one, we know about his durability issues in the past, where they feel he is big league quality starting stuff, understandably, but yet over the course of the season, he's just not going to be physically prepared to make 32 starts. And I feel like this is an opportunity to get him some extra rest, but still keeping Edward in the rotation. So that's my guess as to who we see on the Marlins side. And then on the Mets side, it'll be some of the same faces we already saw this previous series when they played in Miami. Tyler McGill. We should see Cookie Carrasco, who got lit up by the Brewers in his previous outing. And it looks like Kodai Senga once again. He'll be pitching in this series. Yeah, once again, it's a good team. They just lost 3 of 4 against the team. It's intimidating. It's tough, no doubt. It's a tough start to the season to get it going here against a team that, even with some injuries, they do have some key injuries. It's still a hyper talented team. It's one of the best teams that money can buy.
Yeah, and I think we're just gonna go right into it. Series predictions: Mets and Marlins, 3-game set. Now a weekend series. Still was, but with that Thursday game in there. So we're going to do this. We'll do series prediction with the MVP, and then we'll do one for fun. Minor League Player of the Year. Eli, we know whose yours is. It's Evan Fitter, unless it's a different choice. We're going to start with Danny DeVivo. Oh, well, we need the video first, obviously.
Yeah, let me play the video first. 5 seconds of patience, please.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
There we go.
All right, now we do it. Danny DeVivo, our guest. We'll let him go first, so we could copy him right after.
I'm gonna be nice and say Marlins win 1. Assuming there's no doubleheader, Marlins win 1, lose 2. That's my Marlins Mets. I think they'll win 1. Just get the hell out of New York and 1-2. That's my prediction there. And in terms of my minor league player of the year, Khalil Watson.
And we need a series MVP.
Series MVP, a Marlin.
Marlin or Met? Marlin or Met?
No, I'll go Marlin. I'm going to say Gene Segura.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Let's let him come back after that tough homestand.
Yeah. All right, Alex Carver.
Oh man. Man, I hate to do this, but I'm gonna pick series losses for all 3 of these so far, I guess. So yeah, I would agree with Danny. 1-2, Mets get it. We'll see what happens with pitching. It's going to be interesting to see what they do, especially if there's a doubleheader, like you said. But yeah, I'll go 1-2. Series MVP. Jeez. Let's go Pete Alonso. Just because that guy's crazy. He's good. Great hitter. Quality bat. So go with Pete Alonso. I think it's Mets opening weekend. I think he's gonna give the fans something to cheer about. So we'll go with him. Minor league player of the year, man, we talked about it before. This guy left such an impression on me on what he showed this spring in terms of his attitude and his ability to play and impact the ball and play good in the outfield and center field. Victor Mesa Jr., minor league player of the year.
Okay. Eli.
For this upcoming series, I will have the Mets winning 2 out of 3. It's just a really good team, really complete team. And as much as they're dealing with injuries, I think the Marlins as well. Let's hope Jazz is 100% healthy, but the shortstop situation in flux. This is kind of a vulnerable time for both teams. And I think the Mets being at home, they pull out one of these extra close wins. My series MVP, I'll go with Mark Canha, former Marlins farmhands like a decade ago, who is turned into a really good player.
Tying it all together. Look at this guy. That's awesome.
He turned into a really good player, somebody that the Marlins probably should have considered signing more seriously when he was a free agent at this time, a year and a half ago during that offseason. I told you, Evan Fitterer is my sneaky pick for Marlins minor league pitcher of the year. If you want to go on the position player side, I will buy fully into the Khalil Watson redemption story. I think he's going to get himself back on track, maybe not fully realize the prospect he was coming out of the draft in 2021, but I think you'll see a lot of home runs, you'll see a lot of stolen bases, and you'll see him move up in the system as well. So starting in Bullitt, I think he finishes the year in Pensacola and puts him some nice counting stats to restore some confidence in this entire player development operation, because right now we are lacking some confidence in what they can do on that side. I think he's going to be a bright spot in 2023.
All right. I'm going to go Mets take 2. MVP, I will go Jeff McNeil. Think he, one of the more patient hitters, contact hitter. Think he'll make a good impact for the Mets in this series, and Miami really can't stop this guy. And then minor league player of the year, I'm not going to go Khalil. That was my initial pick, but you guys said it. 2 of you said it. So I will go with, I'll buy the hype. I'll go with Troy Johnston as my minor league player of the year. I think this guy's going to light it up as he did. All-star in Pensacola, was one of the hottest players. Now, the only issue would be if he makes the major leagues and he graduates from prospect eligibility. But with that not happening, I think Troy Johnston is our guy for minor league player of the year. And that is where we will end it. Fish Stripes Live by La Pop, Eli Sussman, Daniel DeVivo, Alex Carver. Daniel, thank you so much for hopping on. We always love to have you talk some Marlins farm system talk, prospect talk, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out and go Fish.